Welcome to Coffee and Contemplation. I'm Robin.
I'm Jenna.
And it's Stranger Things Day 2022, so we are going to be ranking our favorite scenes across the series. This might be the start of a new ongoing series, I don't know, but this is just sort of a fun little quick episode here. Just gonna chat through our favorite scenes. At least for me, these are not what I would necessarily consider the best scenes, in quotes. These are just my favorite scenes, the ones that I think of when I think of Stranger Things, the ones that have had the biggest impact on me personally.
When you originally messaged me and was like, here's my idea for what I want to talk about next, our favorite scenes, I literally just was like, okay, quickly, what scenes can I even think of from Stranger Things? Bam, bam, bam. And the ones that came to mind first are the ones that ended up sticking. Like even once I started looking up what are even good scenes in Stranger Things that I may not remember, but those are the original ones that I thought of. Yeah, those are definitely the ones that I stuck with.
It was funny to me how many lists I found, because this is obviously not a new idea. A lot of people have ranked the best or favorite scenes of the series. And it was funny to me how many scenes I went, those are impactful scenes, but they're not necessarily like ones that I love. There were a couple of Bob's death was on a couple of lists.
I saw that. Yeah.
I'm like, why? No, that would be on my least favorite list. You know?
I think that for you and I, the way that we think of our top scenes, it's like you said, it's the ones that emotionally either impacted us or that we emotionally related to or liked the most. I think that some people think of these scenes as best horror moments maybe or something like that. Bob's death was definitely be up there for that. That was horrendous. But for you and me, that's not quite how we're ranking them.
Well, or I guess I should say impacted us in a personal way, in a positive way.
Or a mostly positive way.
Yes, mostly.
And we have not discussed with each other what these scenes are, so we'll see if there's any overlap. I also have a list of honorable mentions to do after. We'll probably do our favorite top 3 and then our honorable mention list.
Yes.
I will say now I don't have anything from season 2 on here, which is sad because I like season 2. But I guess there weren't any standout moments that made an impression on me.
Yeah. I've covered almost all 4 seasons. So there are definitely some scenes that I have said on record, this is one of my favorite scenes. So I can't remember every time I've said that on the podcast, but so this may not necessarily line up with every time I've said that. However, this is also in hindsight, having done the whole series and
you've seen season 4 now and had a chance to think about it for a few months. Yeah. Puts things in perspective differently, maybe.
Exactly. So let's start with your number 3. What is your number
cool.
3?
It's the sequence where we pull Will Byers' body out of the quarry.
That's one of my honorable mentions.
Yeah. Actually. I mean, this moment is not maybe what originally hooked me, but it still made a big impression on me. I had goosebumps all over my body when this whole scene was happening. Really well done sequence. It is sad and another emotion that's connected with this scene is anger. Of course, Mike is so angry. He's not exactly sad, even though he's crying, riding his bicycle away. He's so angry because nobody else believes him that there's this whole thing happening. And he's sure that there's something happening, but he's also mad at Elle during that scene too. So there are a lot of negative emotions in this scene. It's not that the scene made me feel good, but it was still I don't know. It was so well done. The whole sequence with the song playing in the background, all of the emotions, the whole roller coaster through it. Like I said, I had chills the whole time. It was just really, really good.
See, and I had a feeling this might be on your list somewhere because it's the hero, because you've mentioned heroes before. How impactful that was. So I had a feeling. Yeah. And that's obviously from season 1. It's the end of chapter 3, Holly Jolly. That is still, after 4 seasons, that is still my favorite ending to an episode. It's one of the most conclusive. I think the only one that might rival it would be the end of chapter 4 in season 4. Because you pointed out when we talked about that, how that gives you a moment to pause, to take a breath. Holly Jolly does that as well.
And for this particular scene, something that I think I like the most about it is the end of it, where I think it's Jonathan and Joyce hugging in the light of the headlights. That just gives you just that right amount of emotion. You don't really need to hear the conversation that they have with Joyce. That could be a little bit much, but you know that it happens, and you still feel that conversation even without hearing it. And that's what I really love about that ending shot.
Brutal, but in a good way.
It hurts so good.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
And as you said before, like the use of that song is brilliant. I think we talked about that in season 3, but like how it's a very somber rendition of that song. I don't know enough music theory to be able to explain why. But...
I'm sure there are people out there who've reviewed that song and that album in that moment that could say it better than us, but it just works really well.
It's so beautiful. It's so well done.
So Robin, what's your number 3?
I'm kind of cheating with my number 3. This is technically from 2 episodes. And this is from season 2. However, in my top 3, this is as much as I love season 2, this is my only choice from season 2. Like I said, I am cheating a little bit because it's technically 2 scenes, but it's all part of the same moment. It is the reunion between Mike and Eleven at the end of chapter 8, the Mind Flayer, and the beginning of chapter 9, the Gate. We have seen Mike and Eleven have been separated all season. We've seen they've been pining for one another. They've just interrogated Will. The Mind Flayer, through Will, has heard the phone ring. He knows where he is. And the Demodogs are coming. The very end of the episode, they are all ready for battle. And then you hear all of the noises of the Demodogs outside. The door opens and Elle walks in. And it's that slow motion moment where Mike walks around Hopper and they make eye contact. And then they embrace at the very beginning of chapter 9. It's so good. It's so rewarding. That is my favorite Mike and Eleven moment too. I mean, the expression on Wolfhard's face, that just the smile, like that also might be some of my favorite acting from Finn Wolfhard, like just in the show, just the way that I talked about it in season 2 as well, like the way that he's able to, when he asks her, like, why didn't you tell me you were okay? Like the way he manages to not sound accusatory in that is just remarkable. And just their chemistry is off the charts. Like, yeah, that was the moment I was like, oh, they're soulmates. Cool.
It's such a well done sequence. Like you said, it's a good piece of filmmaking. It's rewarding. The buildup and the payoff works really well. The tension is so good, but then that relief and the joy that's there. But then the tension, of course, builds up again after that. But yeah, that moment is still such a good break in that tension.
Those like 2 episodes, it's like they've just lost Bob. They're dealing with they're reeling from the aftermath of that. Will seems all but gone. So it's been particularly brutal, like for Joyce and for Mike, because we've seen him crying. There's been a lot of discouragement. And so this moment felt like a really smart storytelling choice to have, like, okay, we're going to give the audience Mike and Eleven. They can at least feel better about that. Yeah, that's my number 3. What's your number 2?
Oh, number 2, this is going to be so predictable. And I know this is on your list too. Well, it's got to be. My number 2 moment might be your number 1 moment. I'm not sure. The conversation between Steve and Robin in the bathroom. This, I mean, if just for obvious reasons, we talked about this scene, I'm pretty sure, in our episode on the podcast. It's just like, it's so good. It's so well done. It's well acted. We don't really know how well written it was per se, because we think the actors had a lot of input maybe after the script was actually written, where we don't really know, but that's what it sounds like to me. And I just love the way that the actor seems to take ownership of the scene and turn it into what it is, which is just so good. 2 words, so good. They did a fantastic job on it. They
really did. I'll go ahead and say yes, that is my number 1. To the surprise,
spoiler alert.
to the surprise of no one. To anybody who listened to Heidi and I review Chapter 7, The Bite, from season 3. I think it would be a shock if that was not my number 1, given what I said about that.
I wanted to almost leave it off my list because I knew you would have it on there, but I can't. It was just it's so important, and it was too good.
Yeah. I won't say too much about it, because if you want to know my full thoughts on that and you haven't listened to my recap episode on Chapter 7, The Bite, it's a very long and involved story, but I said in that episode that scene changed my life, and that is not an exaggeration. That scene had a quantifiable impact on my day-to-day life. And if you even take that aside from it, I kind of wax poetic about it on that episode too, like about just how much I love the way it's crafted and the performances, the cinematography of it. This scene was on a lot of lists, and it was pretty high. It was I never saw it as number 1, but this is a pretty important moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was my number 2 moment. Well, what is your number 2 moment?
So my number two is another sequence, and it's a long sequence. The van chase from season 1, chapter 7, the bathtub.
Yeah, that's good.
And I'm sort of cheating a little bit because I'm including the sequence at the junkyard that kind of finishes it. The making up between Lucas and Eleven and Lucas and Mike, and it's the entire cold open to that episode. But even if you were just talking about the chase on the bikes itself, I would still probably have it as my second choice because it's one of the most iconic sequences in the entire show. And I think it stands really strong both in context and since. Like, I mean, honestly, I think that scene, for as contained and small scale as it is, I think it holds up against the big stuff that you see in the later seasons.
Yes, that is such a good example of spectacle that isn't like over the top, but still so effective. And I think that they actually did that one with practical effects.
They did. Yeah, like there was a like mechanical or engineering error in the explosive, so the van didn't totally flip. It like shark attacked the camera. They'd done it successfully multiple times in the studio parking lot. And then they were like, cool, so we have everything working. And then, of course, like just as luck would have it, Murphy's Law, they did it for real and it broke the camera.
That sucks.
So, but it is like an amazing action sequence. Part of that is because the kids are so little still and they are so vulnerable. They're just kids on bikes. I know that there's the connection to ET, but I feel like the context of it in that first season doesn't feel like, oh, it's just an ET reference. Like it feels like independent enough, especially now with the hindsight of the three additional seasons. But part of it is that's why I want to include that scene at the junkyard, because it's like it's not just an action sequence. It's also this really important character moment. I mean, we get this like kind of burst of power from Eleven. So it's one of the biggest things we've seen her do, which is something Heidi pointed out when we reviewed that episode. Then it's followed by this really, really powerful moment between the characters. And like, it's, you know, we talked about in season 1, how like it wouldn't have made sense for that reconciliation to happen earlier. Yeah. I just chef's kiss. I love that sequence so much.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good one. That is on my list for honorable mention moments. Definitely. That's a good one.
And then obviously, yeah, like my number one was Stephen Robin. You mentioned like how much of it was pre-written, how much of it was done like casually, we don't know, but I feel like they had more time with it. That scene doesn't feel like they did it like last minute. Like
it doesn't feel like off the cuff. It feels like they put thought into it.
There's an interview, I'm pretty sure it's an interview with GQ that Joe Keery did that I watched right before season 4 dropped, I think. And it's on YouTube, like you can find it. If I find it, I'll put it in the show notes. He said like it was unusual for them to spend that much time on a dialogue scene. And if you think about it, like they have like all this camera coverage of it. Like there's so many, like there's that top down shot that he talks about when they filmed that, when he slides underneath the stall. They shot it from a lot of angles, and you can, I mean, because there's a lot of different like sized shots in that sequence. They don't spend time on scenes usually that are that much dialogue, especially between just two people, that isn't exposition towards the plot, that isn't like developing stuff with the lab, that isn't like world building. This is just a character moment between these two people.
You can tell for this show especially, there are character moments that feel so rushed. I'm looking at you, end of season 4. When you have such a big cast, you think that they would put more character moments in, not fewer, because there's more opportunity for them. So when you actually get one that works, you can tell it's because they actually cared about it and they did it. They put a lot of thought into it. And yeah, no, this is really the pinnacle of that. You can really see that here.
100%. I mean, I love the irony that like my favorite scene in the entire series is from the season I like the least.
I know.
But one of the things that I realized is that I think, like you just said, like this scene is the pinnacle of like Stranger Things doing character interaction really well. I think I've learned about myself as a viewer and as a writer myself that I am very much a character person versus plot. And I think that's one of the reasons I like the second season as much as I do, and why a lot of people maybe don't, because it's more character than about just about anything else. It's it's a very heavy character driven season. So this scene is like catnip to me because it's just it's only there to service these two characters.
Character development is everything.
Yeah. I would just hope that that season 5 has moments like this.
Yeah.
So what was your number one?
My number one moment is season 1, episode 1, the cold open into the title sequence, including the title sequence, honestly. That was the hook for the whole show right at the beginning. They nailed the D&D sequence and the whole vibe of then having these young kids, like you just said, these young boys on their bikes. They're so vulnerable. They're so little, especially Will back then. He just looks so baby. Noah Schnapp was just so little looking back then. And they're just out in these dark woods, and they did such a good job evoking that feeling of the 80s and being a kid in the 80s, the weird freedom that kids used to have back then, just riding bikes back and forth through the woods to each other's houses, playing games with each other and stuff. That whole sequence is just so effective and successful. And I think that honestly, the title sequence of Stranger Things, I love it. Every episode, I love it. But it's so, the first time you see it, it really was so powerful and definitely lends to that 80s feeling too, and really sets the tone for that. So I love the whole opening sequence. It's so good.
Yes. Are you including the very first scene? Because I always forget about that first scene. I always think that the first episode just starts with D&D, but there's also that scene. Technically, the very first scene is actually in Hawkins' lab with the guy running down the hall and the Demogorgon.
That's right.
Getting him.
No, but that little part of the scene does help set the tone that there's something weird going on here, but it wasn't really part of the hook for me,
Right. Yeah.
What really the hook is in that whole sequence is getting to know these 4 boys and their relationships with each other. It's a character moment again, really.
It absolutely is. And it's I think that demonstrates why that scene is so powerful, because that's the one that everybody remembers as being where you start. Yeah, I totally agree that actually the D&D game was on my honorable mentions as well. That's a scene that I think gets better with age, with knowing where they go and how they all develop.
Absolutely. And it's just amazing how effective they are at setting the tone with that one scene. I think that we've talked about this, how the Duffer Brothers, this is their experience. This is where they were coming from. They were the nerds in the 80s playing D&D in their parents' basements. It's one of the strongest scenes out there in the whole entire series.
I just remember being so impressed by, I know we talked about it in season 3. When I first started watching Stranger Things, I had only just barely started dabbling in D&D. The way that they approach it feels, there's just so much integrity there. It's this, that's what it feels like when you have people that are really into it. And it doesn't feel, they manage to do it in a way that doesn't feel cheesy or they're making fun of it. It just feels like if there's some cheese, but it's the kind of cheese that it's but everybody's kind of on board for it. It's earnest.
Yeah, they're really putting themselves on the screen there, I think.
Well, those are our top 3. I reserve the right to change my mind.
Oh yeah, at any time.
But for the moment, those are our top 3. So we did mention some honorable mentions. What were some of yours that we haven't talked about already? I was shocked that the shopping montage wasn't in your top 3 from season 3.
No, I do have that in my honorable mentions, including Max and Elle high-fiving, even as much as we don't like the confrontation between Elle and Mike that happens between those two things. Yes, I do love Max and Elle hanging out together. So that is on my list.
Yeah.
How about Steve earning his redemption at towards the end of season 1?
That was my first honorable mention, actually.
Really?
It was for my number 3. That was actually the one. I really went back and forth between the Mike and Elle reunion and the bat twirl moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was good. That was a good one. Running up that hill. End of season 4, episode 4. Absolutely. That's got to be mentioned. A lot of those lists, we were saying with Googling, wait, what am I forgetting? What are on other people's lists? That was top of a lot of lists.
Yeah.
That I saw, and deservedly so. What about you? You got a couple? I have a couple more, but do you have some?
I was really tempted to put this one in my top 3 just to be contrarian, but it actually is one of my favorite moments. The end of the Lost Sister episode, Eleven says to Kali, "I can save them." That choice, it's one of those things that I think that moment gets forgotten about. It gets lost in the shuffle of the stuff that is not so great about that episode. Because I want to be transparent. I know I tend to advocate for that episode a lot. It's not without its flaws. I understand it's not a great episode. There's a lot about it that doesn't work, but I don't think it's awful. It has great moments, and that's one of them. I love that moment,
and such an important one for Elle.
Yes, I just love Millie Bobby Brown's performance of that, that just quiet resignation that she has, and it's the way that it's built to that moment, like her making that choice. Like I know that you've talked about that episode feels rushed, and I do agree with that, but I do think that decision is earned. Her deciding to go back, I'm going to save them rather than follow this revenge plot. So
it is a defining moment for Elle, but it isn't surprising that she made that decision at the same time. And it still works really well as an intense moment.
It's just so powerful. I just love it. I love that as a moment for 11.
Yeah. Let's see. I have the shootout at the Byers' house. It wasn't exactly a cool emotional moment. That was just a really cool sequence.
Yes, it's pretty
I
great.
mean, and plus that was such a cool, like it really set stakes. We've talked about that. Apparently these people will shoot them on sight. Like that sets some stakes right there. But that was also just some cool film work too. I really liked the way that was shot. Long continuous takes. It was fun to watch and scary to watch.
Seeing the behind the scenes about that, it's funny how it's like, we're going to do this oneer. I'm like, of course they were. Like they have, it wasn't like and I mean that in a good way. Like it's not like they decided that arbitrarily. Like that's been a part of the cinematographic language of the show. So it's like to have it be this like, have all of these like oneers kind of lead to this one like really epic oneer was pretty cool. I liked that. I was like, cool, you guys have been building towards this all series.
Yes, that was a good one.
Yeah.
But you got another one?
I know I said it in our review of season 4, and I meant it. The welcome to Hellfire, the Eddie and Erica. Like I love that sequence. That even the build up to it, right before he says absolutely not. Like her walking around the corner with American flag in slow motion.
Yeah.
I'm like, because I knew it was coming. I knew she was going to end up in Hellfire Club, and I'm like, I was even in episode 1. I'm like waiting for it. I'm like, come on, go get Erica.
When she says the name of her Lady Applejack, her character, yes, that was so good. I love that.
And I'll smile. It's so
amazing.
Good. Yeah, it's such a great. It's like, again, I mean, I wish Eddie was still around for a number of reasons, but like that's just another one of those like great character interactions. Like those two were such an interesting match. Like I would have liked to have seen more of them.
Yes.
I mean, really, like that whole game is pretty awesome. Like I love the way that it's cut between that and the basketball game. It's so great.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. That whole sequence. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in the Sinclair, both of the Sinclairs, like kind of being the one who wins the big game. It's pretty great.
Yes. The parallels. Very good.
She's our friend and she's crazy when 11 saves Mike from jumping off the cliff. Like that was like, that was obviously like on a lot of lists. I love that moment.
And I love that coming from Destin too.
Yeah.
Anybody besides Mike. Love it.
One of the ones I thought of quickly was when Max stands up to Billy at the end of season 2, when she grabs the syringe and say you understand. I just really enjoy that for Max's character development.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then she's the one who ultimately kind of, I don't want to say defeats Billy because he's not dead or anything, but like she's the one who kind of gets him to desist.
Mm-hmm.
Although it did occur to me recently, like, so they just leave him on the floor of the Byers' house. Like, what is it like for him when he wakes up? Does he walk home? Like, I don't know. It's just it's just funny.
Yeah, you're not going to call someone on your cell phone or get an Uber.
Right.
He'll figure it out. He's resourceful. I really liked that one shot when Nancy's in the hospital in season 4. That might have been season 3, where the two guys from the newspaper, were in the hospital. They went to go visit the lady. Oh my God, what was her name?
Mrs. Driscoll.
Yeah, Mrs. Driscoll. I actually really liked some of that sequence. I think I said when we talked about this in the normal podcast episode, that was really good nightmare fuel. That one really stuck with me. I don't really go for the horror moments, but I thought that was really well done. And plus, in that season, up to that point, we hadn't really had a whole lot of those moments, So that one was really good. It was in the right spot, and I thought it was really well done.
There'd been some body horror, but we hadn't really had that kind of flavor. Actually, it's in both 3 and 4, because at the very beginning of chapter 8, I think.
Yeah, there's a callback.
2, it's a recreation of that moment. I remember I liked that. I liked that they brought it back. I was like, that's cool. It was
that was an important moment for Nancy, again, setting stakes and her finding strength to run or to do anything and trying to be resourceful. Yeah, it was really good. That was really well done, I thought. And let's see, I gotta mention Eddie playing Metallica. I know that it's
Yeah.
cheesy and, not maybe not cheesy, but it's like they knew that that would be a successful moment, that everyone would be like, yeah, we're playing Metallica on a
Oh, like,
roof. But
yeah.
still, it worked.
It totally works. I mean, yeah, like I don't know. I wouldn't have necessarily called it cheesy because they don't lean on it too much. Like I think
Right. Yeah.
if they had done more, because I would almost argue that it is character building in a way because it ultimately then creates this experience between he and Dustin. Like because when they climb back down and they're like most
That
metal
was
ever.
awesome. Yes.
Yeah, like
You're right. You're right. Yeah.
yeah.
That's a really good aspect of that whole entire scene. Yeah, for sure.
And he starts out by saying, "Chrissy, this is for you." Another scene that was high on the a lot I saw a lot on a lot of lists were the finale of season 2 with Elle closing the gate, which I thought was interesting because I was like, I like that sequence. It's pretty rad, but there are other scenes from season 2 that I like a lot more.
That's a purely spectacle scene. It does speak to Elle's power, but we don't really have a frame of reference for what kind of power it would take to close a gate like that, because that's like because those gates don't exist here in the real world. We don't know, and nobody else has her powers. We don't know what it feels like. So it's not really a character moment either. It's purely spectacle, which is why it wouldn't have made my lists.
I wonder if the reason it's on a lot of lists, I would have to go back and check when the lists were made, but I wonder if it's on a lot of people's lists now because it does hit a little bit different post season 4. Knowing what happened with 1, it's like, okay, there's a little bit of poetic symmetry happening there. I still wouldn't make my list
Mm.
even with that, but yeah. And then the last honorable mention that I'm gonna mention is the phone call. The phone call that Dustin makes to Mr. Clark in season 1. Why are you keeping this curiosity door locked? That scene, I think, I think it's one of our earliest indications of how much potential Gaten Matarazzo had to carry a scene. Mr. Clark is on the other side of the phone conversation, but Dustin as a character and Matarazzo as the actor, like, really is the propulsion of that moment. I think it's an early example of like why I think he ultimately has started to take over as like the central figure of that age group. And it's so funny. It's easily one of my favorite comedic moments of the show. Like, I have a science question.
Yeah.
Dustin, why are you building a sensor deprivation tank? Fun.
Science. Science.
Well, it's and then like of course the follow-up to that is him going, yep, okay, all right, goodbye. Like
Right.
it's such an interesting moment in just in terms of Dustin's trajectory as a character because he doesn't I don't think he gets a solo moment like that until that scene. I think that might be one of, if not his. I haven't watched season 1 nearly recently
Right.
enough, but my memory, if memory serves, he has a lot of standout moments, but they're usually with the group. Like he has the like moments of emotional maturity with Mike on the bikes or before, and then he has the moment where he's like figuring out about the compasses and all that. But like, so he's had like moments of to stand out, but this is I think his biggest, like all the attention is on him, everything's kind of down to whether or not he can get this information from Mr. Clark.
That one really reminded me of Donnie Darko, but in a very weird way, because Donnie Darko, I mean, it might have comedic moments in it, but it's obviously not a comedy. And the discussions that Donnie has with his science teacher are definitely not funny, I don't think, but they're still like kind of a similar, it's the young kid trying to figure out the supernatural crap they're going through or whatever. So I felt a little bit of a parallel in that too.
I've never seen Donnie Darko.
It was just something about the way the science teacher referenced like a book or something. I don't know. I felt that parallel. I don't know if they were really trying to go for it or not.
That's probably what they were going for with Mr. Clark in general, though, would be
Maybe,
my
yeah.
guess. Yeah.
I loved Mr. Clark though. We
Yeah.
talk about characters that we like. I like Mr.
Yeah.
Clark.
Yeah. It's almost like this show has got like lots of really good moments in it.
Weird. For as much as we complain, we always complain about the things that we love the most, right?
Exactly. Well, and it's also the like what Heidi said like way back in the very I think towards the beginning of season 1, which was, I think part of the reason that like we get frustrated is because it's like we've seen them do better. It's like you guys
Yeah,
are
that
better
too.
than this. Like
Mhm.
you've demonstrated that you can do better. So
Yep.
I think overall, like my kind of the surprising takeaway for me with this is I was surprised at how varied like thinking about what are my favorite scenes, like what's on my honorable mentions and what ended up in my top three, there was such variety. Like I thought there would be a lot more from the second season or the first season. And I do think looking over my list, I think most of my choices are from season one, and how like there's a lot less of season two on this list than I expected. But this was an interesting exercise because it's kind of a nice reminder of like how there are these little moments of magic all throughout.
Well, and little moments that change your life, that's important.
For sure.
It's nice to think about what we like about the show.
Mm-hmm. So those are some of our favorite moments. I'm thinking about maybe seeing if some of the other co-hosts who've been on the show might want to come on and talk about their favorite moments, just so long as it's not redundant.
You can have favorite moments, but they have to be different than the ones we talked about.
Yeah. But I want to do more stuff like this. So nothing's too tangible or specific yet. But yeah, wanted to do at least a little bit something for today for this special occasion. But until the next episode, whenever that may be, hope everybody is having a lovely Stranger Things day. Hope everybody had a lovely Halloween. Did you do anything special for Halloween this year?
Nope. I was supposed to have a root canal that morning, but that ended up not happening. So I didn't do anything all day.
I was gonna say that would have been scary.
Yes, exactly. That's what I thought when we scheduled it. Like, oh, that's appropriate. But no, we gave candy out and it was a good relaxing day at home. We did go to King's Dominion the Friday before Halloween and we did all of their haunted houses. That definitely got me in the spirit. It was awesome.
That's so cool.
Yes.
Did you go in costume or did you dress up?
I did. I did actually. I wore my Celeste from Animal Crossing costume.
Nice.
Yeah, it was super fun. What about you? What did you do for Halloween?
I did a trunk or treat event and we did a Wizard of Oz theme, but I couldn't quite pull a Wicked Witch of the West costume together in a way that I was happy with. So I ended up just not doing like a matching costume. I did kind of just a sort of generic witch, sort of with like Halloween colors. I mean, really, I was just wearing a lot of black and orange. I actually dressed up in 2 different costumes on Halloween. I went to work as season 2 11.
Oh, nice.
Post the Lost Sister look, the bitchin' look, the hair slicked back, because I have recently cut my hair quite a lot.
Got the hair for it right now. Yeah, might as well.
I actually did a little short video with my coworker. He was like, we should totally go to the store and film you like buying Eggos. So that's awesome. That's on our TikTok and our Instagram. But then for the evening, for the trick-or-treating portion, we go to my cousin's house who also live close to us, and they have a lot of kids in their neighborhood. So we go over and hang out with them and pass out candy. And again, my hair is short. I restyled it and went as season 2 Steve. And I didn't know if any of the trick-or-treaters would recognize my costume or not, but a couple of them did. And it absolutely made my night. So
oh, that's awesome.
Very happy.
That's so fun. I love it.
I didn't get any pictures of me as Steve though. I was really bummed. I was like, dang it.
Aww.
Yeah. But yeah, so this was fun. I liked doing this, reviewing these scenes.
Me too.
Chatting about them. Well, then I guess though on that note, that is going to conclude our our contemplation, our ranking of our favorite scenes for the entire show. So listeners, what are some of your favorite scenes across the series? Like, do they line up with ours? Are they different? You can chime in and join the conversation. I'll probably throw a poll and a question up on our Spotify if you follow us on Spotify and listen there. But otherwise, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We're all over the place, and all of our links are in the show notes.
Thanks for listening.
Over and out. Except for Argyle.
Except for Argyle. Argyle just fucked off into the woods to do whatever. Let's talk about that moment for 1 second. I don't think I quite emphasized when you and I talked about that scene, how Adam and I were just laughing that whole time because Adam fixated on where's Argyle. He's not standing on the hillside with everybody looking cool. Where is he? They just left him in the woods. Like, we couldn't stop laughing. It honestly broke us. That scene, it did not work for us because we were laughing.